Rudyard Griffiths here, the publisher of The Hub. Welcome to this, the Roundtable edition for Friday, the 4th of April. I'm joined by Sean Speer, my co-founder and editor at large. Sean, you survived the week. It was a busy one.
Yeah, a lot of great content at the Hub, Roger, both on our website and, of course, our live show on the YouTube page. I've had a lot of fun doing it with you, but the most fun has been interacting with our growing audience. We've had big numbers out each day, a lot of great exchange. It's certainly what's kept me going, that and a lot of coffee.
Yeah, no, this is the last 30 days, our biggest 30-day traffic period in the history of the Hub. Over 5,000 people came on to our live stream midweek with David Frum to break down the Trump tariffs live from the Rose Garden. So some cool stuff from our perspective, nerdy as that is, in terms of engaging with an audience in different ways, like moving beyond the website to this YouTube channel, to our podcast feed, and we just really appreciate the community supporting all this. And talking of support, Sean, we got some new Hub Fellows this week, and you've got the honor of reading out the honor roll.
Yeah, let me thank James P., Doug Pat H., and Emily G. For joining us as lifetime fellows. Those fellow contributions are huge shot in the arm. They've enabled us, for instance, to essentially build from scratch the production studio where you are and where we've filmed each day. Grateful to the three of them, the four of them rather, and to all of those who are supporting the Hub.
Yeah, here. So look, Sean, the first half of the show, I think we want to have a little bit of a conversation with our friends out there in the conservative movement. Maybe it's a moment for a little bit of, constructive honesty from the Hub here about where the campaign finds itself as we basically hit the 1/3 mark in this 36-day election. And then on the back half of the show, I want to talk to you, Sean, about post-election, regardless of who wins. There are some big issues out there on the horizon. We've been digging into them over the course of the week on the Hub, and I think it'd be great to bring those to our paid donors and members who get the back half of the roundtable each and every day as a video on demand and as an audio demand production. So if you've not become a Hub hero, please do that now. It's $1 a week. It's the best deal in town. You get all of our premium video, audio, and premium web analysis, all the stuff on our website that is exclusive to subscribers. So do that now at www.thehub.ca. Sean, I think the conversation that I wanted to have, and I'm going to put this on me for us doing this, really has been what I've seen in the polls over the last while, and frankly, what's happened since Wednesday with Trump tariffs and a very profound market reaction. And this kind of crystallized for me today, Friday, with a new Nanos poll. I like Nick Nanos. I think he's got a good methodology looking at likely voters, not the entire universe of voters. He's now showing fully a 20% gap between the Conservatives and Carney, with, again, this poll coming out on the day after the tariffs, ending April 3rd. So getting maybe a little bit of a sense here of the directional bump out of that Rose Garden announcement. Pierre Poilievre down almost 2%, Mark Carney up almost 1%. So Sean, I start to think that there's some concern here that the Liberals are opening up a lead that will become increasingly challenging to close out if something doesn't happen. If you leave this to chance, Sean, well, then you're leaving it to chance. It's a roll of the dice. Something could happen in the debates. Yeah. We could find out something about Mark Carney we don't know. But I think that is increasingly leaving your fate to a long shot. And we don't think that's the only option that the Conservative campaign and Conservative supporters have at this moment.
Yeah, it's interesting that line of thinking applies to the two major stories of this campaign. At a macro level, we've been talking a lot, Rudyard, over the past several weeks about how Canada has to control its destiny vis-a-vis the Trump administration. We can't merely be responding to the president's threats and provocations. We need to, in effect, aim to control what we can control, which is our own competitiveness, which is our own ability to attract investment and protect employment. And that line of thinking applies to this race as well. That, as you say, as week two comes to an end, at this stage, unless we see something significant and different out of the conservatives, there's a sense that they're putting their campaign in the hands of external forces, whether that's a misstep by Mark Carney in the debate, or we learn something new about Mark Carney we don't know at this point that causes Canadians to revisit their views of him and his leadership. That's a pretty dangerous place to be in, Rudyard. And so for that reason, it seems, I think, increasingly self-evident to me and you, and I suspect a lot of our listeners and viewers, that the Conservatives need to do something dramatic to try to restore their kind of agency over this election campaign, as opposed to heading backwards into an outcome that will no doubt be a disappointment to them and other Conservative supporters.
Yeah, well said. Look, this is not a pivot. This is not about necessarily, because a pivot implies somehow turning around or going back. I think what we're talking about is taking risks. That now is the moment to try to force debate, to try to force the Liberals and, frankly, force the state-funded media to engage, listen to you, focus on you, and kind of deal with what you're putting forward, to reclaim a narrative for the election in some way or another. Because right now, I think if we want to be honest with ourselves, it's no fault of the campaign or Pierre Poilievre, but they have been displaced by events. The narrative has moved so far beyond whatever the Conservative Party is talking or doing each and every day. Yes, the affordability narrative is there. That is their narrative. But let's face it, Trump, not directly, but indirectly, is swamping our election. Thursday's market reaction, today's market reaction, again, Friday, down significantly. The NASDAQ in full correction, 20% losses off the high. S&P following closely thereafter. Canadian markets also down. Oil just getting crushed. Sean, this, you can wish for the world to be one way, but then there comes a point where you have to accept what it is. And what it is for this Conservative campaign right now is a world that's running away in directions that are very favorable to Mark Carney, favorable in terms of Canadian perceptions of who can stand up to Trump, and favorable, unfortunately, and again, this sucks, but in the last 48 hours, if we're headed towards a global recession, because China has now retaliated with significant countervailing duties against the United States, and people are seeing large losses in their investment portfolios, in their retirement funds. Well, guess what? Who does that play to again? Mark Carney, former central banker, perceived as a competent financial manager. I don't know, Sean. I just think the campaign's not there yet, but you come to a moment where you start whistling by the graveyard.
Yeah. One thing that James Moore, the former Harper-era cabinet minister, said in our live show earlier today is that it's his sense on the ground that there are fewer and fewer undecideds in this election, that people are increasingly making their decisions, in part, no doubt, Rudyard, by the Trump tariff announcement. And so, as you say, we've written and spoken favorably of some of the announcements we've seen out of the Conservative campaign, but I think it's a fair criticism that none of them have punctured the public consciousness. In part because, as you say, there's this huge issue looming over the minds of Canadians, and that has enabled the Carney campaign to essentially either match the Conservatives or simply ignore what the Conservatives are saying and doing. They need to, in effect, pull Mark Carney into a debate, and that involves taking risks. By definition, wedge issues, Rudyard, come with trade-offs. But at this point, if the Conservatives play it safe, if they're not prepared to live with a world of trade-offs. It seems increasingly likely this is going to be an election outcome that disappoints them. And so, I think this is a crucial weekend, particularly if there are fewer and fewer undecideds, as Moore says. If they don't pull the trigger on something provocative, something new and different, something striking early next week, I worry a bit that their ability to define the final weeks of the campaign will pass them by.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be the bad cop here, Sean. It's not going to be a disappointing outcome. It could be a potentially catastrophic outcome for the party. Look, I mean, the latest seat projections and odds for Mark Carney forming government, 90%, if you take the aggregate of the polls. The Conservatives, not even forming a majority, but forming government, 1%. Okay, like we're at the break the glass moment. And what happens if the Liberals win, and we're going to talk about it in the second half of the show, is that there's an existential risk to the Conservative Party here in terms of Western alienation, the Western reaction, especially to a Liberal majority. So I think the Conservatives have to kind of look. It's not fair. It's not nice, but they've got to like suit up and understand that their potential survival as a party is on the line here. If these numbers hold and the Liberals cruise into a significant majority government. Like this is a 5-alarm fire right now. And a final point to come back to you is that if they wait to pivot, let's say after the debates, again, sorry, I don't want to use a pivot word. Let's use the ambition word or the risk. If they want to go risk on, let's call it that, and they wait till after the debates, then as James Moore said to us today on our live election show, 10 a.m. Eastern each morning on YouTube and on demand on our YouTube channel and in our podcast feed, he said, rightly so, it'll look desperate. It'll look exactly like what it is if they wait after the debates to go risk on. They need to go risk on next week. And let's share some ideas, Sean, because we're not just here to carp from the side to clutch our pearls or kind of wring our hands. I think there are some ideas. Let's talk about a few of them.
Yeah, we're on the same page here, Rudyard. I'll come to the ideas in a minute, but just to emphasize your point, if you think about it this way, the Conservatives' announcements thus far, some of them, as I say, interesting, no doubt useful to households, just are not grabbing the consciousness of people and not forcing the Liberals into uncomfortable positions. And that's enabling Mark Carney to essentially run a non-campaign campaign. He's ignoring his chief opponent and basically acting as prime minister. And that strategy is working for them. The Conservatives need to force Carney into some uncomfortable positions on issues like taxation, criminal justice, immigration. The list goes on. But in the absence of that, as you say, you just get the sense that the Liberals are just going to coast into victory. So what might some of those issues be? Those are questions we've put to different people, including James Moore today, Ginny Roth earlier this week. One example would be committing to use the notwithstanding clause to protect tough on crime legislation for murderers or pedophiles or others. One idea that we've championed at the Hub is committing to eliminating income taxation for people who are entering the workforce for the first time, to give them the opportunity to build up a bit of a nest egg to pay off student loans or save for a mortgage or whatever. I mean, I think we had a great piece this week that did well at the Hub by entrepreneur Matt Spoke, arguing to dramatically reduce corporate taxes in order to protect against capital flight in the face of Trump's tariffs. There are issues, as I mentioned, like going after the Liberals on immigration, committing to lowering immigration rates, something that I know comes with risks, but for which I think there is considerable support in the population. I guess just before I turn it back to you, if I can emphasize one point, Pierre Poilievre's career has been marked by a willingness to take risks, to take positions that don't have universal support. Think, for instance, of his early commitment to defund the CBC, or oppose vaccine mandates, or commit to firing the head of the Bank of Canada. All of those were wedge issues for which there were some who strongly supported them and some who strongly opposed him. if he's not prepared to kind of lean into that political persona now, there is a big risk here, I think, that it becomes impossible to gain control of the agenda, to assert the party's agency over this election, and to challenge the conservatives, or pardon me, challenge the liberals heading into E-Day.
Yeah. Yeah. The point I'll just make is that there may not be a plan B at this point. Like plan B, waiting around, hoping something's going to happen and the polls are going to break your way, or the race is just going to inherently tighten on its own. Well, one, the polls aren't showing that. The polls are showing that the liberals are maintaining, in some cases, adding to a very substantive lead, especially in Ontario and British Columbia. I mean, the gap is frankly catastrophic for the Conservatives if it holds at this level. So, what's Einstein's definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If the next third of this campaign, the next 12 days, is just the regular rollout of a series of announcements that probably, were written down 30, 60, 90 days ago as part of some campaign Bible, that on day 17 we will do X here and say Y. I just think they're going to come to a point where they realize that they realize in a sense where I think we're at, and then it'll be too late. It'll be too late for either the strategy of a risk-on approach to have effect, because there won't be enough runway left in the campaign. And second, again, to go back, it's such an important point, it will look manufactured. It will look desperate. And just my final point to throw back to you is, I know a lot of people are hoping that the debates are going to be some kind of turning point in this campaign. I just want to remind people that these are state-funded debates created by the Liberal government of Justin Trudeau. We've seen what they've offered in 2 elections now. It was called, I think, charitably and correctly by Andrew Coyne as cringeworthy, both of those efforts. We spent over $10 million of taxpayers' money on those debates. We never funded states debates before Trudeau. And now Pierre Poilievre, we had said to him months ago that he needed to come out and get out of these debates, or at least he needed to be shown to be oppositional to the idea that he would participate as an opposition leader, and that back then a front runner, in a series of debates that the incumbent government had organized. And I'll turn it to you. My final point about these debates is that there's going to be 5 people on stage, and in typical Canadian fashion, every single one of them is going to get equal time. So you take 90 minutes and you divide it by 5 people, and you have Elizabeth May and the Bloc and whoever else, rambling on, Jagmeet Singh with, single-digit support. And you expect you're going to get some mano-a-mano moment, some Turner Mulroney type turning point in a campaign. I think the odds of that, Sean, are very, very low. And the system's designed that way. It's designed to take that conflict, that risk away from an incumbent government, precisely because you flooded the zone with all these irrelevant parties and irrelevant political leaders who have no chance of forming government and really have nothing substantial to say about this incredible moment that the country finds itself in.
Yeah, well said. Such a crucial point. Those who are betting all of their hopes and aspirations on a knockout punch are likely to end up without their betting money. Just the last thing I'd say, and it comes back to the polls that you showed. People need to understand that at this point, if these polls are accurate, Mark Carney's voter universe is pretty wide and pretty broad. It includes, Bay Street executives on one end to social activists on the other. And the Conservatives need to shoot a kind of policy scud missile right through that coalition and force some uncomfortable choices on Mr. Carney. In so doing, he risks bleeding support to the Conservatives from some parts of its coalition and to the New Democrats on others. Take, for instance, Rudyard, the issue of Israel. We know that it was uncomfortable for the Trudeau government. It ostensibly is even more uncomfortable now, given, as I say, the breadth of Mr. Carney's coalition. If the Conservatives aren't spending the weekend thinking of those types of ideas to really turn this into a contestation as opposed to Mr. Carney's non-campaign campaign, the door to changing the dynamics in those polls is going to rapidly close soon.
Yeah. And again, these are just these are ideas. Take them or leave them. But on that very point, what about coming out and saying that Canada's citizenship oath has to include a line for every person who becomes a Canadian citizen to state that they support the right to is the state of Israel to exist as an independent, free, and pluralistic nation. Like, that's the kind of thing I think you need to do to cut through a media cycle and a media environment right now, Sean, that just isn't giving you a hearing. I mean, there's so much else going on. And I'll tell you, Sean, these market corrections and the sell-offs that are going on top of all the other economic anxieties that Canadians have right now, it's really panicking. Well, it literally is. Look at the market. It's panicking people. We're going to say goodbye to our complimentary listeners and viewers here. We're going to join our Hub subscribers on the other side of this short break. If you want to become a Hub subscriber and get access to all of our best paid content, including our paid podcast and the full-length on-demand video versions of the Roundtable and In Conversation with David Frum, please become a Hub hero. You can do that right now on our website, www.thehub.ca, $1 a week. We'd love to have you as part of our community. So I'll say goodbye to our complimentary listeners and hello in just a moment to all of our paid supporters and subscribers. Bye-bye.